Hello there, world of tankers. Welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Droodles Blitz, and in today's video, I'll be playing in the Tier 10 Soviet Tech Tree Heavy, the IS-4. A vehicle which is strong, but still not good enough, at least if you ask my personal opinion. On paper, the IS-4 has a lot of great strengths. It has 2,800 damage per minute, which is solid. 420 damage per shot, standard pen that's solid, premium pen that's really good. Overall, the gun on this tank, unless you take a look at its on-movement dispersion, is pretty good. Mobility-wise, the tank has a top speed of 44, it has a power-to-weight ratio of 16.5. All these values are pretty dang solid. But there's a couple issues I still personally have with the IS-4. The first one is, as I mentioned, the on-movement dispersion is really bad. It means that when you turn the tank, it causes it to bloom massively, making it very hard to actually snap shells in, which, I mean, is understandable. It's a heavy tank, but it's one that sacrifices a lot of armor so that it can have good DPM. I wish that the gun was just a little bit more accurate. The other thing that I don't love about the IS-4 is its reverse speed and necessity of super speed boost. The vehicle only reverses at 14, and because of that, you need super speed boost to make it reverse faster and get into position faster. Why not just give the tank a better reverse speed? Why not allow it to go 48 kilometers per hour base top speed? The problem is you have to run super speed, which then takes away a repair kit, which makes your tank a lot weaker, and the track wheels are not very strong. So those are my major problems with the IS-4. I'll be honest, I think the 777 kind of defeats the IS-4 in 90% of situations. There are some disadvantages. This tank reverses at 12, the IS-4 reverses at 14, this tank has worse traverse speed, and it has worse turret armor. But in terms of the gun, the 777 has more DPM, more alpha damage, better on-movement dispersion, and overall accuracy, if you ask me, and because of that, definitely makes the 777 feel a bit more enjoyable. The other tank, which I feel like kind of defeats the purpose of the IS-4, is the T110E5. The IS-4's hull armor, as we know, is pretty bad. The lower plate's incredibly weak, and most standard shellers are going to cut through the upper plate. The E5 actually has a really good hull as long as you hide the lower plate. The upper plate's incredibly hard to pen. This vehicle has 8 degrees of gun depression and a turret that's nearly impervious. When you pair that with a top speed of 42 with a much better effective power-to-weight ratio and very similar reverse speed, it kind of makes you question why you would drive an IS-4, especially when this tank has better standard pen, better premium pen, similar DPM, and overall much better accuracy. So, yeah, I do think the IS-4, it's decent right now. It's not a super strong tank, but I do think that it is at least a good to strong vehicle. But I still wish that it just had a little bit more going for it. Personally, as I said, increase its top speed to 45 kilometers per hour, 46 kilometers per hour, buff its reverse to 16 kilometers per hour, and buff the on-movement dispersion by about 15%. If you do those three things and you remove super speed boost, I think the IS-4 will be incredible. But right now, I feel like there are other tanks which do a better job at certain things, and because of that, the IS-4 just falls into this little state of limbo, which means it's still good, but it's just, you could drive tanks which are better, you know? That's the best way to describe it. But we're going to see what we can do in the IS-4 in 2 games. We're going to activate our speed boost, which is obviously going to allow us to accelerate pretty quickly. So here we go, up to 48 kilometers per hour, which is the top speed of this tank. What do we have up against us? We have a Chieftain Mark 6, we have an FE2 and 5B IS-7. Mainly, though, we want to keep an eye on the mediums as well, the Vickers Light and Centurion 7-1, and that's because I am going to be making my way over to caves. It's what I just like to do on this map a lot in my heavies, especially with turret armor, because you're able to put yourself in a position that's pretty good. I didn't actually think that Vickers Light was going to get there so quick, especially because we do have the E50 over here as well, but he did. We have the enemy Jagdpanzer 100, who we detected, and with the very solid heat pen, we can cut, well, I was going to say right through the Yag, but unfortunately, he turned back last second, which made it impossible to hit him there. All right, well, let's aim it on this Yag again, and that time, we do actually end up cutting right through his vehicle. Pretty good stuff, bleeding the Yag a little bit of his HP. The Jagdpanzer 100 misses me, and we load another gold shell straight into his tank. We can see that pretty good accuracy when sitting still on that enemy Yag, being able to bleed him out just that little bit. We also aim it on the side of the Chieftain, getting a 412 bleed as well. So far, we've already done 1,200 damage. We haven't really bled any ourselves, which is all pretty good. That Chieftain is looking at me, though, which I'm not the biggest fan of. There's no point to bleed health unnecessarily, so I'll wait for that Chieftain to make a mistake, and then I can poke, just like so. We have the Tortoise in the back. We also have the Vickers Light right here. We're going to aim at an HE on the rear of that Vickers and get a nice 540 damage shell. That's all pretty good stuff. We also have the Tortoise right over here. We're going to aim it on that Tortoise. And bonk. Nice 368 heat shell. So far, I'm enjoying this tank. I mean, we've been having a pretty good game. We're already up to 2,000 damage. We're going to aim it on this Tortoise again. We're going to wait for our turret to turn. As I mentioned, this tank is really, really bad. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's the only thing I don't like about the IS-4. Like, its gun just misses a lot of easy shots. And you saw a prime example right there. Like, that was a pretty easy shell on the enemy. And, well, it didn't go nearly anywhere close to where I wanted it to. We have the Centurion. We get a 407 damage shell into his rear. I don't know exactly how much damage we're going to be able to deal this game because the enemy team is getting quite quickly bled. We do have the rear of the Chieftain, which we get a nice 540 damage shell into ourselves. But at the same time, the 4005 is going to aim in on his tank. We're going to reload, and we're going to get a nice pen right in between the IS-7. So we did 3,300 damage this game, which is a solid result. The IS-4 didn't bleed any health, and overall, a pretty good game. But the question I have for you, as I mentioned before, is would an E5 have done just as well? And the answer is yes, the E5 would have done just as well. In fact, we might have done a little bit more damage with the E5 due to the fact we wouldn't have missed that shell on the enemy Tortoise. So, again, this tank has strengths, but I do feel like other tanks can do just as good of a job in the same situation. But, again, I don't think it's a bad tank. I actually think that Wargaming has done a decent job fixing the disaster that they made the IS-4 in the previous state that they had originally nerfed it to. I still am a little confused why they did change the IS-4. My thought process, the only thought process that I can create, is that the Type 71 was similar to the IS-4. And instead of having two tanks that had a similar playstyle, Wargaming said, well, let's change one of them to have a completely different playstyle. Then they said, oh, well, the Type 71 is a disaster on PC, so let's leave it the way it is on Blitz, and let's make the IS-4 a different style. That way, people will grind the Type 71 if they want to play something like the IS-4, and then the IS-4 can be a mobile heavy. That's my guess. That would be my overall thought process to why Wargaming decided to balance the IS-4 the way they did. Now, do I agree with that balance decision? I personally don't. I think the IS-4 was different enough from the Type 71 with the level of turret armor it featured and overall playstyle that it was different to an extent, and it had a lot more HP. It had a lot of different capabilities and advantages that I really liked. So I don't personally agree with all the decisions that, well, Wargaming made. And again, you can see that accuracy. I hate the fact that this gun has, like, just really mediocre accuracy. It misses a lot of easy shells, which I really don't think it should be. It's just annoying. 3, 2, 1. Take a blind shot at that enemy FE2 and 5B183. Alright, well, at this point, I really haven't done anything, but the enemy IS-7 has decided to make a rather aggressive play, and I think that's going to be a misplay from the IS-7 because I do have good heat pen, and I have solid damage per minute, which puts this IS-7 in a really awkward state. So we're going to aim it on his tank, and we're going to get our second shell into his vehicle, taking him down another 396 health. And because we know where the enemy FE2 and 5B183 was last spotted, it means that I also have the ability to push right up on this enemy IS-7 and kind of chill in a somewhat aggressive spot. The problem is I don't have the gun depression to hit the IS-7 there, so we're going to have to drive over and get a nice 409 shell. So far, we're doing pretty good. The Kron's going to poke the FE2 and 5B and get one shell into his tank. Let's see if we can get another into the IS-7 ourselves. There you go, another 413. We're doing pretty good. We're up to 2,000 damage already. The Kron is going to aim it on the 2 and 5B, ends up messing up the shot, which is fine. I'm going to aim it on the E4. Okay, that made very little sense, but okay, I mean, it's AP as well. Normally, it's like APCR that ends up missing those shots, but yeah, that was an AP shell that just bounced right off the 4 side armor. Oh well, it is a boat-shaped hull after all. It can be rather troll. The 210 E4 shoots the Progetto. We're going to aim it on the E4's lower plate. We're going to track him in the process, dealing 387 damage. That puts us up to 2,800 dealt so far, and we're just going to simply move on up here and aim it on that E4 lower plate. There you go, 446. He's probably going to pen right through my hull armor because at the end of the day, while the IS-4 does have decent armor, it's obviously not going to do much against something like an enemy that has so much premium pen. So we have the Chieftain, which we get a nice 385 shell into. And just like that, this will be an incredibly easy win. But even in this battle, you can see just how quickly we have bled our health in the IS-4, and I didn't even play overly aggressive. In fact, I'm going to die most likely. And it is a great example of the fact that while the IS-4 does have these amazing capabilities, it just falls apart so quickly as well. Like, that game, Did I do anything really aggressive? Not really. I mean, yeah, I did poke the E4, but again, I just feel like an E5 would have done just as good, if not better, in most of these situations. Same for a 777. But we had a good game, dealing 4,000 damage and putting ourselves, once again, top on the team. So, what are my overall opinions on the IS-4? If you're planning to grind this vehicle, it's not a bad tank, and you can do fairly well in it. Most of the games that I've played on my press account in the IS-4 were after the changes, and my win rate's still low at 65%, but my average damage is okay. But it's not a great performer for me overall, and it's because you just don't have that aggressive capability that you kind of want to have in Soviet heavies, where a vehicle like the 777 has just kind of better overall capabilities. Look at my win rate and average damage in this vehicle. It's much better. So I think the IS-4, it's a solid tank, and if you want to grind it, then go ahead. But I feel like if you want to go for a mobile, somewhat aggressive style heavy, there are better options out there. The T110E5 is a great shout, and I think the IS-7, after the premium shell buff too, is quite good. It's still very mobile. It only goes 4 kilometers per hour slower than the IS-4, and yet features a lot better other capabilities like tungsten shells, holding potential, and damage output. Look at my stats in this tank as well. So, I don't know. I'm still a little disappointed with this tank, and while I do have fun with it, I just wish it was the old IS-4. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.